Hello and welcome back to another Off the Ruck, your weekly rugby breakdown review of the British and Irish Lions thumping the Queensland Reds in their second tour game. It's their third game overall, but their second tour game of Down Under. I'm John Ferguson from Off the Ruck. I'm joined by Lockie from the Scrumbags pod. Lockie, you're a Queenslander. It was a hell of a game. Why don't you give us your first thoughts on the game last night? Because it was thoroughly entertaining, although the scoreline, again, did not suggest that.
Yeah, cracking game, Fergo. Thanks for having me on again. And eerily similar to what we saw against the Force. A tight opening half, and then amazingly, the Lions just flick that switch. Their counterpunch is so effective, and their ability to take every chance they're given is kind of terrifying as we head into that Wallabies series. But take nothing away from the Reds. They had a really good crack first half. They were excellent, and some massive performances from some Wallaby contenders, mate.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because we're definitely going to go there to the key players in just a moment. But before we head into actually what happened on the pitch, off the pitch, 46,000 plus people at Suncorp on what looked like to be a beautiful Queensland evening weather-wise as opposed to the storms that we had down in New South Wales. Cracking event. And I think a lot of people are missing the fact that these are supposed to be games where there are blowouts. Like the Lions are expected to win by a fair margin because they are a cut above. And I hear people talking about rugby league, like State of Origin was sold out in Optus Stadium, like only a couple of weeks, only like a couple of, I think 10 days or 7 days before the Western Force game. But that is supposed to be the pinnacle of the sport. This is a tour game on the way to one of the test games. I just don't want rugby union fans to feel disheartened or disillusioned by what's happening because 46,000 to a game where the outcome is likely 40 points plus known before kickoff. That is an incredible testament to what an amazing and historic, series this really is. Don't you think?
Oh, I agree 100%. And it's mainly because that feedback's coming from a lot of league fans and haters of Australian rugby. There are plenty of them. We're trying to get rid of them piece by piece, but we've just got such a higher ceiling. State of Origin, those showpiece events, they are the top of their game. This is still a step below. This is not a test match, and it's certainly not a Lions test match. So for the Reds to draw their biggest crowd in 12 years, absolutely massive. It's their biggest crowd since the Lions last came to town, and that's when the Reds were at the peak of their powers coming off a 2011 premiership. Also, look across to last week against the Force. Unbelievable crowd club record, 47 plus. So it's an amazing benchmark, and it's only going to get bigger and better. We're looking for an Allianz sellout. That's the goal for Sydney this Saturday.
Yeah, and it's heading that way, certainly, from what I see from the ticket sale. So that's going to be really exciting. We'll go through some general takes on the game, and then we'll head into specific players. And then at the very end, what we'll do is we'll give you a locked Lions. The players that we believe have solidified their spot in the test side to take on the Wallabies in their first test on July 19. But general thoughts on the game, I thought that the Reds really came out firing out of the gates, really gave it to the Lions, and they said so much. Maro Itoje and Jack Morgan, who was the single Welshman in the squad left after Thomas Williams went home, he said that the Lions came out and fair play to them. They really gave it to us in the forward. So I was really impressed with the pack, as we were expecting. You and I in our preview discussed about the strength and the aggression of the pack, and they really showed that. I think for the Lions, what was really reassuring is that a lot of their set piece is really starting to glue, and that speaks to greater cohesion, which is coming through the side. So really, really impressive. And I think that ability to continue that cohesion, even when the side changes quite significantly, because the Lions did bring on, I think, like 4 or 5 of their 7 replacements at once in the forwards around the 50, 55-minute mark. And they kind of went up a notch, and that speaks to their elite talent. But of course, they're growing cohesion. And so, although the Western Force don't have as strong as defense as the Queensland Reds did last night, they were still able to turn the screws on them, and that was often through quite an improving and a solid set piece, which is something that we kind of critiqued last week. How did you see that set piece battle there, Lockie? Because it was highly contested, but I feel like the Lions may have just got one up on that.
Yeah, it's a funny one. I'd say the Lions definitely win points at line-out time, but the Reds scrum, to win 4 scrum penalties against that pack, very impressive as well. So I've got huge raps on Aiden Ross on debut, who's come across. I know you're high on him, but Jeff Tumunga Allen, all the big boys that really shifted up and squared up in that Reds pack impressed me at scrum time. Line out and pace around the park. That's where the Lions really pushed it. You mentioned around that 51-minute mark, 50-minute mark. From there, the intensity that they added led to 3 quick-fire tries. It was a blink and you'll miss it kind of moment. They were so effective. Spearheaded by Jack Morgan, who was a clear best on ground in my opinion. But that sort of Lions bomb squad that came on, gee, they did some damage. I was very, very impressed with that.
Yeah, it's crazy. The Bomb Squad, indeed. I think they truly deserve that name for being able to put on such a clinic 2 weeks in a row. And it doesn't matter who's coming on, really, because as you see, Andy Farrell is rotating robustly and he's still getting great results. So, really, really a big testament to Simon Easterby, his assistants, his other assistants as well. And then, of course, Andy Farrell himself for really getting this side up mentally, because that's what it takes when you're playing 4 games. Sorry, yeah, 3 games in a week, and then you go on to play another one, and then you've got a long tour ahead. It's definitely more of a mental strain. Something that Captain Maru Toje has spoken about, the mental strain, especially after a long Northern Hemisphere club season, as well as Six Nations. So these players are elite. This is why they're here. And the rotation that Andy Farrell is putting through the side really, really is helping them to deal with the load that they're clearly under. So I don't want to hear any complaints about the Wallabies players having to play a certain amount of games. This is elite rugby at its finest. I think again, you're right to point out the scrum. What I would say is that I think Andrew Porter actually probably did deserve to win one of those himself. I know that Aiden Ross did get a little bit of a sentence there, Jeffrey Tumunga Allen as well. But I do think that Andrew Porter looked like he was bending. I believe that he was on the loose side. He's on the loose side, obviously, so he's up against Jeffrey Tumunga Allen. I think he did bend Jeffrey Tumunga Allen out of shape a fair few times and was unlucky not to get penalties there. So that's ominous. Really strong scrum. And we will talk about players later, but I feel like the general slick hands from the Lions in the back line and their ability to once again get outside the Reds' defense, as they did with the Western Force, extremely impressive. And their moves ran smoothly, were able to get to where they wanted to, but the Reds' moves weren't at all able to get out further, and they got caught behind the gain line and often kind of in an awkward position.
Yeah, heaps of pressure on a young halves pairing. Kalani Thomas experience, but they did target Harry McLaughlin-Phillips, caught him a couple of times, just a little indecisive. And Jock Campbell's doing his best out the back, but the line speed sort of led by Hugh Jones and Bundy Ake, I think was very impressive. They weren't shooting too hard, but they managed it really, really well, and they just were able to suffocate that Reds back line. Still a couple of Reds that put their hands up through that, which we'll get to, but geez, I was really impressed with Hugh Jones' performance, just his handling and his all-round game. He's not someone that I thought would get too much of a look in with the established sort of ring rows, but geez, he's really put his hand up for me over the past 2 games. His effort off the bench against the Force, and then last night scored a great try, clean pair of hands to pick off that very speculative chip kick from Tim Ryan and race away and score. He's the full package, Hugh Jones.
Yeah, and I think there's some people in and around the park that are into that kind of muscular, tall, fast build, and I've been seeing some comments on social media. So I think some of the female supporters are getting their fair share of hunk
Oh, he'll be on
from this
gain
one.
lines for sure. Keep an eye on
Yeah.
gain lines for Hugh Jones.
um, but one thing that I was pondering over this morning before the pod was just the kicking accuracy of the Lions. They just know exactly where they want to put it, and then they can put it there. Whether it's kicking for line, whether it's putting up a bomb, or whether it's deep territorial punts, they are just so clinical in that part of the game. And it doesn't matter who it is, whether it's Finn Russell, Finn Smith, or Elliot Daly. Obviously, Elliot Daly went off with an arm injury. Remains to be seen how bad that is, because he has been playing in some absolutely amazing form. And we just hope that it's not too serious of an injury, because that would be a real shame for him to his Lions tour to end in such a way when he is such a veteran, but he's really, really showing his class. So we'll keep a tab on that, and we'll keep you guys up to date. But they're kicking aside. They're Actually, I'll get your takes on the kicking first, because it was really impressive, and it's something which Australian halves, uh, whether it's 10 or 9, just aren't doing quite to the same level.
Well, it's as pure and simple as the stats lay it out, Fergo. They kicked so much better. They almost kick double the meters from the same amount of kicks out of hand. Their ability also just to find one from penalty. You mentioned it before, but Jock Campbell's touch finders, absolutely nothing on the fins and on Elliot
And he
Daly
missed
as well.
touch in
Having the
one
left right
instance.
combo, he did. So it's just those little things, those core skills that are so effective. I'm not sure what it is technique wise that the Australians are missing out on at the moment from sort of ball out of hand. But there's
Mm.
something about that connection. It's so sweet. And having a left foot option as well, something that the Reds don't have. Geez, it was really, really sorely, keenly felt in that game. And you mentioned Elliot Daly before. Geez, I do hope he's okay because what was that? I think that was his 11th consecutive Lions game.
Mm.
If you rope in New Zealand and South Africa as well, he is probably the glue in that back line, the Mr. Fix It. My likely 23, to be honest. So I really hope he's sticking around for the Lions. So
Yeah, no, fingers crossed. We'll keep you up to date on that from when we hear more. Again, the thing that I want to touch on, you talked about defense. They are really putting some stingers on in defense. They're getting up quite quick, well connected, and that's a worrying sign for the Wallabies because now the Force and also the Reds found it difficult in successive phases, even if they got maybe 10 plus, they just weren't able to break down that defense. So that's something that Joe Schmidt and co are going to have to really look at how they're going to vary things up to be able to put pressure on them. Obviously, Kalani Thomas found some really good space behind them, but that only happened once. And then after that, I think they shut it down. Even when Tim Ryan tried that speculative chip kick that you mentioned earlier, it just wasn't even on. Their coverage was so good with a halfback and to Elliot Daly in the backfield. Let's talk about the key players, Lockie. I think we'll start with the Reds, and I would like to say that you and I previewed hard the opportunity and the pressure that was on Salakaia-Loto and Hunter Paisami to really put on a performance. And I think you said, I think they were your words, so I'll let you say them again, but it was Hunter Paisami needed to have the game of his life. And I tell you what, it's probably the best game I've ever seen Hunter Paisami play. He was shredding.
yeah, look, we asked Key delivers. I'm not sure whether they're connected, Virgo, but playing a game against Bundy Key, I thought he had his number and some. He was so effective in contact. His ability to shrug out of tackles is really impressive. Like we know he's compact, we know he's strong, but yeah, he was tossing seasoned test lions off his shoulders with ease. Finishes up with, I think, 6 tackle busts, couple of line breaks, very effective offloads. But what most impressed me was his ability to chop. He was getting nice and low as well. We saw some great ones from Josh Fluke too. But not
Mm.
only did he chop when he needed to, he was also able to soak. So his defensive reads went up another level. Hunter finishes with no missed tackles. Very important stats for your inside centre. So as far as putting your hand up for a goal 12 Gs, if I was Lenny Kitau and Joseph Kuso-Suoliti, I'd be wanting to play out of my skin against Fiji because Hunter Paisami is knocking on that door. And Salakaia-Loto, I'm sure you got some numbers for me as well, but his sting in the carry was unbelievable. I mean, a couple of reckless moments, 2 late shots off the ball that gave away penalties are frustrating to see. But as far as an enforcer role, he was hitting the lights out. I was really impressed with his carry game.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned the Carragher in particular. Defense was decent without being amazing, but there was a want and ambition in those defensive hits, which is what you want to see. A little bit more accuracy on those and a bit of time in Wallaby camp. If he is indeed included by Joe Schmidt, I'm sure he'll shore that up really quickly along with Laurie Fisher. And then the carry is something that we've wanted to see from Lukan Salakaia-Loto regularly, consistently, and more often. And it's something which has been a miss because he's been carrying quite high. But I tell you what, he was not carrying high last night, and he regularly attracted 2 or more defenders. And even though he only made 4 carries, so quite low compared to Sero Uru, who we'll talk about in just a sec, who carried a game high of 18. So 14 more times he carried than Salakaia-Loto. But Salakaia-Loto made every single one of those carries count. He took them on the burst, in motion, and he definitely made it over the gain line, even with, at times, 3 Lions defenders hanging on to him. And with the tweak to Will Skelton's calf in Wallabies camp, who will be sitting out this Fiji test, that is the kind of bulk and size and aggression you'll want to see from someone who may need to come in and step up should that calf strain take longer than the next 17 days to fully get back to 100%. So absolutely amazing from Lukan. His line out work was impeccable. He did another one of those one-handed basketball takes in the line out to really swat it out because he didn't get very high. I think Maro Toje got the jump on him, but he was just so quick with that 1 mitt to just be able to swipe it and then send it straight down to Kalani Thomas. And then this is where I'm going to throw to you because Kalani Thomas, I think had the best game he's ever played as well. He was running, darting, shrugging off tackles. He shrugged off Maro Itoje at one point. That shouldn't be physically possible, but his pass was good. His box kicking was good. I think had he had someone like Tom Liner or a more experienced 10 outside of him, he probably would have shone even more. But he had to do a lot of commanding last night, and I think it showed eventually on his all over game. But I was really impressed by him, the young halfback.
Oh, look, all capped by that amazing bounce out of the ruck and grubber for Josh Fluke, who picked it up around his shins and scored sort of midway
Yeah,
through that first
great
half.
pickup.
Kalani had it all. One sort of little moment there where he was a bit indecisive. I think he broke two tackles and then ended up surrendering and turning over. But it's a tiny blemish in what was otherwise an excellent all-round game from Thomas. I'm not a noted kicker of the ball, but I thought he kicked quite effectively and was able to land his boxes in the right spots. But geez, the strength from the young fella to shake him off. I think he finished up with 6 tackle busts in the end. Obviously, the try assist. I would have loved to see him stay out for longer. I actually thought the Reds lost a fair bit of direction with Wirtshon on the park, but great signs for Kalani Thomas moving forward. We know he's got Maori heritage, but he's Australian. He's been there for a long time. Certainly someone that the selectors will be interested in sticking around.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point that you shout out there. I think also the final Reds player that I want to touch on is Seru Uru. Really busy in attack, probably pushed the offload one too many times. I think two of them that I saw were really accurate. A couple of them weren't very accurate. There's one to Matt Fesler, which was around his bootlaces. Had he caught that, he would have been absolutely smoked by Tommy Freeman. And then this tendency to give away dumb penalties, and I'm not talking about like high tackle or anything like that, but scooping a ball back in the scrum when you have 20 cameras on you at any one time. Like he did the same thing versus the Fijian Drua in Fiji where he grabbed Frank Lamani's ankle and didn't let the halfback run out. It's just so not on that it's not even funny. Like it's not skullduggery, it's just plain dumb. Like that may sound too harsh, but it's like you've now given away a penalty to a scrum that you eventually would have won anyway. So yeah, really frustrating. And I actually think that despite all his really good work, that is a concerning sight for someone like Joe Schmidt. Even with the likes of Tom Hooper, Langy Gleeson, and Leota heading offshore, who won't be part of the selections window necessarily moving deep into this year.
What frustrated me most about that scoop, Fergo, wasn't that he did it. It's that he didn't have the awareness for where they were on the field and the understanding that it cost them that try. So immediately the half arm they've got a great scrum, half arm goes around, Lions go quickly, and Van der Merwe's over in the left corner. That's a direct result of Uru's poor decision making. And you can't afford that in a test match. You couldn't afford it then because that was, in my view, the turning point for the game. Red should have exited, could have gone up into the sheds down by 2. Instead, they go down by 9, and they're never in it from there. So a really frustrating moment. It was otherwise a pretty good game from Uru, but not the consistency I think required of a Wallaby forward in a Lions series.
Yeah, no, it was frustrating. I think it's the best way to describe it. But let's head over to the British and Irish Lions side because there were some key performers in there, and we'll very soon touch on the locked in Lions, who we believe there. But I think I want to start up front again because they deserve the plaudits. Despite the scrummaging battle being a ding dong battle and back and forth, I do really, really, really rate Andrew Porter and Ellis Genge. And I know I'm talking about the bench players now for the loose head props, but they are so strong in that position where the Australians and the Wallabies will really need Alan Alatoa and Taniela Tupou and Tom Robertson if he ends up scrummaging on that side, or if it's Zane Nongo, to stand up because those two are so elite. And Ellis Genge providing such amazing running impact off the bench. It's like Angus Bell, but I feel like he may even be better than Angus Bell in that running game because he is so strong. They call him the baby rhino for a reason. Apart from that, I wasn't particularly impressed with Will Stewart. Ronan Kelleher and Luke Cowan-Dickey, both really solid players, really good. I just don't think it was like their best nights necessarily. But the props on the loose head side, Porter and Genge, extremely impressed. Who in the pack impressed you?
Oh, for me, it was all Morgan and Itoje, and we'll get to them in a bit because they will definitely be in my locked lines. But those two were the standouts. And outside of that, I was actually really impressed with Jack Conant. I thought he had a really underrated game. He was their top carrier, very industrious. I like his no-nonsense approach. He's very much an old-school footballer, an old-school back rower, covers all back 3 positions, a back row rather, and just really effective in soaking up pressure. He always seems to attract two defenders, laid on a nice try assist, core skills are solid. I think he's the kind of player that will probably be contesting for the 20 jersey role in the test match, but he'll certainly do a job for you. So I thought he did his test aspirations no harm.
Mm. On that, and you mentioned good defense, good work rate, especially around Jack Morgan. I was extremely impressed with Jack Morgan. He finished with 21 tackles. I'll get you the missed tackle stats in a sec when we talk about locked in Lions. But Ronan Kelleher made 17, Maro Toje made 17, Jack Conan made 17. The territory and possession were almost 50-50 split once again. And have a guess, who is the highest tackler for the Reds?
Highest tackle for the Reds. If I had to go off the dome, I'd probably say, oh, I don't reckon it was a forward. There was just he won't make enough tackles. Was it Thomas or McLaughlin Phillips?
It was Harry McLaughlin Phillips with 11.
There you go.
Like, he's made 10 less than the highest tackler, and then he's up 5'8". And then the next highest is Hunter Paisami on 10. And then the next highest is Joe Bryle on 10. And then the next highest is Lockie Anderson on 9. So I don't know where the Reds forwards were, but they were not making tackles because it was clear that the backs were doing a lot of the heavy lifting, which is really impressive from the Reds' backs. But nonetheless, you do not want that to be the case. And particularly your 10, who's a 21-year-old 10, who's just fresh out of the under-20s program, to be able to be making the most amount of tackles for your side, full littered of Wallabies, particularly in the pack and internationals. It's just not good enough. So that kind of goes to speak about where the effort areas could have been. It's something you and I have spoken about a lot leading into this game and also reviewing the Western Force game. And then in the back line for the Lions, I think, as you said, Bundy Aki was good without being amazing. Hugh Jones was very good. Energy was very high. But I think Duan van der Merwe really, kind of made a name for himself again after having a pretty quiet one against Los Pumas, not being overly impactful. But last night he was really, really good. So the mechanoid from Scotland, extremely impressive. And I think his fly half, Finn Russell, again, was just class. I think they were the two standouts for me, along with Elliot Daly as well at fullback. Hopefully his arm's all good. What about you? Who was the backline impressed?
I'd throw in Tommy Freeman too. I thought he was very solid. I actually thought he outperformed
Big lad.
Dewey. Jenny's a big meaty boy. So is Dewey though. They're not exactly midgets, are they? But Tommy Freeman's ability to get nice and high and contest everything. That's what we saw from the Force game with Mac Hansen and James Lowe. Their work rate was so impressive, and I think that's something that Freeman matched. Probably shades Dewey in, but in the same token, Van der Merwe's ability to get out of sticky situations with ball in hand, like wow, that cross kick, he should have been tackled in goal for all love and money, and shrugs that off and gets this side out of trouble. He was excellent, finished strongly. So they've got a huge battle to pick their wingers for that test series. It is honestly neck and neck between those four front runners.
Yeah, it's an embarrassment of riches for them, as it is in all positions for the Lions. But yeah, you're right to point out they do have some absolute large humans on the wings, and that's something that the Wallabies wingers, whoever they may be, looks like this weekend it's going to be Harry Potter and Max Jorgensen. Not exactly the biggest wingers, but they've got a fair bit of pace, so maybe it's more like rabbit versus turtle as opposed to trying to one-on-one each other. But I think that, yeah, Jameson Gibson Park was really good without being absolutely amazing, but it's his first game back after an injury, so I think that centre pair, that halves pairing looked really good moving forward without being immaculate. His speed and width on a pass is truly amazing. I'm envious of that sort of halfback distribution ability. It's Aaron Smith-esque. And then I guess we'll head straight into the locked lines. So, Lockie, who, if anyone, has solidified, has played well enough, or has been impressive enough to be able to lock their position in to the test side to play the Wallabies in the first test on July 19?
Of the easy one to go with is Maro Itoje as skipper, and he's played like it too. He's been very impressive in both that Argentina game and against the Reds. Yeah, like we said before, could have been up there with Jack Morgan for best on ground. I think he almost had the same amount of turnovers as well. Gets over the ball well for a big man. But outside of that, I would volunteer Morgan. I'm sure people will have something to say about a couple of his missed tackles, but for the work rate and his ability to get on ball, they will need that to combat the McWrights and the Tizanos of the world. And just so intense. His dominant hits as well in defence were excellent. I think he's at the heart and soul of that pack. And at the moment, I'd be having Itoje and Jack Morgan penciled in at 4 and 7.
Is that for your whole? Is that if the whole side, or are you just going forwards? Is that you throwing that to me?
Oh, I think that'll do. I might give some backs after you and give you a bit of clear air there, Fergo. Who have you got
Uh,
for me?
Alrighty, love it. So yeah, I reckon Maro Toje locked in for number four. There was speculation about the impressive nature of Joe McCarthy's effort in Perth against the Western Force. He was extremely impressive. There's chat about maybe Tyke Byrne is not quite the athlete that he was, so maybe he's better suited to the second row as opposed to the back row where they're playing hard and fast for this game format for the Lions. So that means that he comes into that equation. I thought Ollie Chessum was quite impressive as well, and James Ryan off the bench. But I can't see anyone unseating Maro Toje, and it's a bit of a shootout for who joins him in the back row. So really impressed last night. He chased everything. He made all the right hits, really good decision making. And in the 79th minute, when it was 47 to 12, he pointed to the sideline and Finn Smith absolutely rocketed a ball straight to the 5 meter line. That speaks to the mentality and effort areas he expects of his players around him. So that's the leader that you want on the pitch. And I think that's what Andy Farrell will be feeling as well. I'm going to say locked in at number 10 is Finn Russell. I can't see anyone doing what he's doing from Marcus Smith or Finn Smith. And I think it's just more about that experience, particularly as he grows now that we know that Ben White's coming into the squad for injured Welsh halfback Thomas Williams. Um, I think his case is only growing, really. You might have Finn Smith and Alex Mitchell come off the bench together, that Northampton Saints combination. I'm not saying that's a lock 21-22 combination, but I'm just saying that's why Finn Russell for me is locked in. And then I think elsewhere, I think the only other player is Dan Sheehan at hooker. Even though he wasn't part of this game, I think he was so impressive in leading the Lions against the Western Force last week, and he's just provides something a little bit different compared to Ronan Kelleher and Luke Cowan-Dickie of England. So yeah, he's just been so impressive, and that I think that's where I leave it. So Dan Sheehan at hooker, Maro Toje at number 4, and Finn Russell at number 10 are my locked in. I think you could probably put Jameson Gibson Park in there, but I'm just going to hold off to see him get some more game time. So just those three players for me.
Yeah, I like it. I reckon you bang on there with Russell and Sheen as well. I'm still very high on Morgan. Maybe people just need a little bit more time to figure out what the balance is of that breakdown setup. But for me, Jack Morgan's a lock there. So we'll see over the next couple of weeks how we go. But I'll tell you what, there's one bloke who's knocking on the door that I wouldn't have expected, and that's Hugh Jones. I really think with another performance or two like that, he'll be the man in 13. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to be an all Scotland affair with Tuipulotu.
Yeah, I mean, it remains to be seen. I think we're waiting to hear. We're recording this before we hear the Lions side for the Waratahs game, but I wouldn't be surprised if Tuipulotu goes into the centres there because he still has a lot to prove if he wants to make up the ground on someone established and trusted in the Irish camp as Bundy Aki is. So we'll see how that goes now after a really strong display from a lot of the centres throughout this Lions game. And I think that's where we'll leave it there, Lockie. That's been a really good review of the Reds versus Queensland Reds last night. Again, the scoreline, not particularly flattering. It's what's to be expected. But I think you and I were closer with our predictions. And I think that had the Reds taken one or two of their opportunities and not conceded some of the penalties that you mentioned, again, it could have been closer. But I'm honestly saying this now. The British and Irish Lions are getting better a lot faster and cohesive a lot faster than I anticipated, and I can only see them getting better and better as the weeks go on. So ominous signs for the Wallabies, but nonetheless, these are just Super Rugby sides, which without their full complement, we'll go and see how they go against the Waratahs and the Brums coming up. But any final comments there, Locke?
No, mate, those two massive games coming up. We've obviously got the AUNZ game coming up as well with a few more names dropped for that. We now know that Marika Korobetti and Pete Samu are going to be a part of that setup as well, which is very exciting, adding to that contingent of New Zealand players that's coming across. And Brandon Pangaramos has also been released. So make sure you're keeping an eye out for the AUNZ updates as well, plus First Nations Pacifica. Lots of amazing tour matches to come. And a Wallabies test coming up on the weekend. How good?
That's right. And I'm glad that you mentioned that because there's a lot of news to stay on top of here at Off the Ruck and with Scrumbags. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and find us on your Spotify platforms. Oh, sorry, the platforms that you find your podcast. That includes Apple Podcasts and Spotify. There you go. And we'll be keeping you up to date as much as we can about the news that's happening around the grounds. This is lots of rugby to be played over the weekend, over the coming days. Make sure to like, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Likewise with the podcast platforms where you're listening to us. And then also don't forget that you give us a follow or a subscribe really helps us to reach more rugby lovers like yourself. And if you're needing to keep up to date, the Scrumbags Instagram page or the Off the Ruck rugby page or both, really good place to be able to pick up your rugby news and stay on top of it whilst everything is so hectic all the time, Lockie. You have work to do. I have work to do. Preparation, review, everything. So to all the listeners listening to us today from wherever you are, you're watching on YouTube or the podcast platforms, thank you very much. And we'll see you guys on the next one. Ciao.